We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming out. For those of you I don't know or haven't met, my name is Gabriel. I'm the city manager. I want to introduce a few folks here that are with us tonight. We have our mayor, Todd Filippo, several of our council members here, if I can pick them all out of the crowd. Got Councilmember Nick Lawson, Mayor Pro Tem Paul Faligi, I think Councilmember Mary Copeland, Councilmember Brack St. Clair. Got a number of staff here tonight. You'll hear from Lee Howell, Assistant City Manager, here in a minute. Fire Chief is right next to him. Our Animal Services staff, Officers Dunks and McKinnon. You got to watch Officer Dunk. He's in his off-duty time, he's a rodeo judge, and I bet he's a roper. So, if we get rowdy, then you see the rope swirling, I'm running for the door. No, I'm just kidding. Our finance director in the back, Kim Quinn, and our communications staff, Alina, Pedro, and Kevin. So for your friends, your neighbors who cannot be here this evening or aren't with us, we're recording this. We'll go through a number of slides. I'm sure there'll be questions. We'll take questions at the end. We ask that everybody come to the microphone at the end, speak into the microphone so that we can catch it on the audio and have a good recording. So all of these, this is our third and last town hall meeting we've recorded. It's up on our bond website, which is saginawbond2026.org. You may have received a document that looks like this, a postcard. This went out citywide. We also have an informational mailer that has a little more information than this document that's going out. We're sending out information in your utility bills, so electronically, so we're trying to get the information out. A little bit of a disclaimer. Staff is not here to advocate for or against bond propositions. Our role is to provide information, maybe talk about the process, why these propositions were brought, and some of the decision-making behind the scenes. So voters, your friends, yourselves, your neighbors will decide whether this proposition or any proposition gets funded, and we do that in the future. So I think with that, I will turn over to Lee. A brief overview before we get into the details. Proposition C, $15 million, would, if voters approve, fund a new animal control shelter facility, approximately 10,000 square feet, which is twice the size of our current facility. The $15 million total proposition includes design, which is civil engineering and architectural design, site preparation, utility work, pavement, and all of the inside of the house stuff, furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. So it's an all-in budget. We followed a similar path that we have in previous facilities. This is a good example, this facility here. We engage architects to do a needs assessment, which is a space planning exercise based on inputs and population, what we expect in the future, and then ultimately the city council decides what is a number that they would like to bring to voters to look at. So this is a project that's going on. We've had discussions for probably about the past 3 years. The animal shelter facility, we've had 2 space planning assessments by 2 different firms. So a lot of, before we bring this to voters, a lot of work, a lot of discussion, a lot of thought has gone into it. Both of these space planning assessments are on our bond website, so when you go home you can read it. One was done by a firm called Quorum, the first was done by a firm called Animal Arts. So those are on the bond website. Feel free to look through, and I think the next slide is Lee's, so I'm gonna, like a good churchgoer, I'm gonna sit at the front. So thank you.
Okay, so where did all this start in the current, for the current project? The council appointed a bond committee back in a few years ago as a 2024 bond exploration. That 14-member bond committee assessed 20 projects and ranked those 1 through 20. And 13 out of 14 members of the bond committee voted to rank the animal shelter as the #1 priority project amongst all of those projects. So you'll see some other projects that are on the bond proposition on here, some street projects and park projects. But the citizens on the bond committee did in fact rank the animal shelter #1. So as Gabe mentioned, there were 2 facilities needs assessments that followed the idea that we, wanted to look at building a new animal shelter. In 2022, the council commissioned an architectural firm called Animal Arts to look at that design. They presented 5 options in their needs assessment to give the council a good choice of things to try to pick. The Animal Arts architectural firm suggested or recommended what they called value option 3, which was not the most expensive and not the least expensive. That would have been, in this version that they recommended, a 12,400 square foot facility that had a capacity of holding 40 dogs and 36 cats at a cost estimate somewhere between $14.25 to $14.75 million. So when this came up for council to consideration, they tabled any action on it, which pushed it forward for another year. And then the council then authorized a second architectural firm to do a second needs assessment. And Quorum Architects, which is right here in Fort Worth, very local architectural firm, but a well-renowned architectural designer of animal shelters throughout the state of Texas and several other states. They performed another needs assessment, and they originally presented 3 options. They recommended the largest option facility, but we asked them to pare it down to something closer to what the Animal Arts presentation or recommendation was. So the quorum ended up calculating approximately 10,000 square foot facility to replace the current animal shelter if the bond package passes. And that facility would be designed to hold 40 dogs and 51 cats at a cost estimate of $14.6 million. Now, and I'll show you another slide here in just a little bit that explains this in more detail, but that $14.6 million was calculated by taking today's construction costs and design costs, and escalating it with a 6% escalation for 2 years to put the construction in 2027. So it actually ended up close to $13 million in today's dollars. If we build it 2 years from now, which is realistic, that would be the earliest that it could be built if the bond package passes, because there would be about a 9 to 12 month period of architectural design, and then followed by a construction manager at risk selection, and then construction would start. So given the election in May, if it passes, then realistically the earliest that construction could actually begin would be in the summer of 27. So we have added an escalation cost to arrive at, from today's cost to arrive at that $14.6 million. So the option that was used to arrive at that cost number that the council then authorized $15 million to pay for in the bond election is depicted by these 2 slides. The floor plan on the left. I don't know if you can read, you probably can't read what all the detail of that, but it incorporates those kennels to hold on an average daily basis somewhere between 40 or fewer dogs and 51 cats. So I'll point out that there's a difference between the Animal Arts cat estimate and the quorum estimate from 36 to 51. The reason for that is that in between those times, between those two assessments, we implemented a TNVR program with cats, which means we trap stray cats, vaccinate and neuter or spay them, and release them back into the area where they come from. That has been very effective in many places, and we've seen an effect here that it cuts down on the number of stray cats, feral cats that are gathering together in what we call cat colonies. So you may have had one of those in your neighborhood, but we have consistently trapped those cats and then released them sterilized and vaccinated to cut down both on additional kittens being born and any disease outbreak amongst the feral cat population or domestic cat population, because obviously not everybody keeps their pet cats indoors. So this facility would the part over to the left-hand side of that floor plan diagram depicts the dog kennels. The middle part is a number of different functions, including staff workrooms, restrooms, office areas. The little tab up at the very top would be a sally port, an enclosed sally port, which is important for us to have if an animal shelter vehicle comes in with dogs or cats in it. We can get that into an enclosed area so that an animal can be safely taken out and not escape, which can happen in a non-enclosed area, obviously, and then transported directly into the building and go to a isolation or quarantine area as a new animal introduced to the shelter. So on the right-hand side is a depiction of a site plan. And again, any image that appears from this point forward in this PowerPoint, there has not been an actual true architectural design of that. So it could come out completely different. But this is a conceptual design based on the needs assessment and based on the type of facility that the architect has recommended that the city of Saginaw needs to get us 30 to 40 years into the future without having to rebuild anything. So again, the site plan there, and on the right-hand side, the site plan is based on being housed on a particular piece of property, which is currently in negotiation. We feel very confident that that's going to go forward, and I got some slides to further illustrate that here in a second. So again, you may or may not have seen these images. This one and the very next one. It is simply considered an artist's rendition of what an animal shelter could look like, positioned on the property that we would have and positioned given the parameters that the architect has recommended to build it to. And again, here ground view. You'll notice over on the left-hand side there of the building, or the stage right of the building, is an outdoor rec yard that would be fenced off, that would have easy access to the dog kennels, and that's depicted with artificial turf, which comes into play. Those rec yards and the kennel areas are a big piece of why this building is designed and would need to be built the way it's suggested. And I'll explain that some more too. So here is a cost projection for the Proposition C. So it's a fairly detailed cost projection, as you can see. The total over there, again, $12,994,811 is an estimate at today's dollars. And you'll see in the predicted or projected in the little cloud there is the 2025 cost estimate. That's what that figure is up there at the top. And then the cost escalation factor, again, 6% per year for 2 years, bringing the 2027 cost at around $14,600,000. So the council debated back and forth about how much money we needed to put forth in this bond proposition. There were a number of different round numbers in the millions that were discussed, and the council authorized $15 million to go forward. So that, you know, the $400,000 difference between the project cost estimation for 2027 and that 15 million could be taken up by a huge cost increase in materials or construction materials, or construction labor, or it could be used as contingency for some other type of facility that needs to go with the bond or with the building. And I'll also address that here in a minute too. But again, it's prudent for the council to have authorized 15 million, slightly over what the projected cost is. If you're sitting in a building that was originally thought about in 2017 or 2018. Through the process of discussing that cost and that design phase and with an architect, which took a little over a year, between the time especially of 2022 and 2024, there was a huge, unprecedented, literally never seen before, cost escalation in labor and materials. We went back to the drawing board on this building a number of times to try to adjust to that by cutting materials or doing different material or cutting square footage and looking at different ways to accommodate those cost escalations. We hope that doesn't happen again. It could, but we're factoring in, that's where we factor in the 6% cost escalation every year, and that's compounded each year, right? So some people, including our needs assessment architect, have suggested that 6% may not be enough. In fact, the city of Fort Worth, which has a big bond proposition going right now as well, is using a 7% per year cost escalation on all of their buildings, anticipating an additional increase over the 6%. Just another illustration of where all of those costs depicted on that previous slide go. You see the great majority of that goes to the actual construction, the materials, and the architectural site prep includes a contingency component in it, the design of the architectural design of the building itself, which again has not occurred yet, and the site preparation. We've separated out the geotech, materials testing, IT, running IT and utilities to the building, and that FF&E stands for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. We've separated all of that out because it is not typically included in the construction cost, which is going to be set and managed by the construction manager at risk. Those offset costs there in the smaller part of the pie are owner expenditures that we have some control over. And the one on the geotech and materials testing is a procedure that is done to protect the city, to make sure that those materials are up to code and specs and stay that way. So they test the concrete and steel and things like that, other products that are used to build it throughout the entire process of the build. So the current, this is taken from the Tarrant County Appraisal District website, the current animal shelter sits on Brenda Lane. Anybody want to raise their hand who's been to the current animal shelter? Okay, vast majority of people here. Was it easy to find the first time you went there? Okay, that's because Brenda Lane is actually not a real street. It has a street sign, it says Brenda Lane, but it's actually a private driveway. And it doesn't Google Map or Apple Map very well. In fact, the Postal Service has contacted us a couple of times wanting us to change where we deliver stuff to the animal shelter because they have to put it on a special truck to deliver it there. It's not on a real postal route. But needless to say, this area, which is kind of depicted from this black line here and up into that little area there. So that is all city property. The large building, you see the white roof up to the far left and the other outbuildings there until you get to the blue square. That's the Public Works facility and our vehicle maintenance area. And the animal shelter and everything that goes with it is in that little blue rectangle. So that rectangle depicts about 0.68 acres of land out of about a 5-acre area that the city owns right here on Brenda Lane. The biggest part of that is this building, which if you've been there, that's probably the only place you went into. The other buildings, some of these are this is just a roof that can be driven under. This is another piece of a shelter covering. And you'll notice there's a lot of other little buildings around there. The original building that's kind of stuck under that roof on the back side was built in 1987, and it was a record storage unit over here in City Hall. It was moved to that location to become the animal shelter back in 1987. And then the larger building with the white roof there was built in 2006. And that's where the majority of the dog kennels are housed. They're also where we have the office space, a front desk, and a cat room, and a number of other things. That building itself is about 3,800 square feet. So I mentioned the potential new site of a new shelter if the bond is passed, and that's depicted here in the blue outline on this picture. It's between Jarvis and Defile off Minton in the industrial area. Some might say, well, why would we consider rebuilding in the industrial area again? There's several reasons for that. One is, how many of you want an animal shelter next to you by your house? Probably not, any of you. So in this area, it would be somewhat isolated from residences. The noise and sound and whatever would be attenuated enough with in those other buildings. They wouldn't really care about it. So it would be a low disturbance factor to any residential neighborhoods. The other thing is that both needs assessments recommended somewhere between 4 and 5 acres being utilized for a new building. So this depicts about 5 acres of property. Right now, it's used by a trucking company to park trucks on. The facility would, or the new facility as planned would take up a portion of that. It would leave room for future expansion if needed, but it also would leave room for exercise yards and things like that on the exterior. The land itself is about 5 acres. Part of the deal that's being negotiated is the city owns this little square up here on the corner. That's Bailey Boswell at the railroad tracks. The on the very opposite side of this corner, on the north end of this particular piece of property, is where the water tower is. So the city owns that little parcel. It's 1.21 acres. And the owner of the larger tract is interested in owning that property so he can develop it or sell it all at once. That's a piece of very valuable 1.21 acres, simply for the fact that it has road frontage and rail service to it. It's really probably too valuable for us to construct anything on it for the city or as a city building, so we're willing to trade that and some cash for the difference between this property and the proposed property that's the other 5 acres. And we're looking to negotiate that and finalize it sometime soon. Another little component of that deal, you see what looks like a roadway at the top of that white kind of peninsula area that looks like Florida or something. So that's not a roadway, it's not a street, it's just a path that goes between Jarvis and Defile. Should this deal go through and we negotiate a settlement on it and own that 5 acres, the owner of the property has agreed to deed that roadway up there, that other stretch, to us, and the city could then put in a true roadway between there, which would connect Jarvis and Defile. And that's very important to the industries in that area there, because they can get completely blocked in or blocked out of emergency services reaching them if a train is across a certain part of the tracks there that crosses Minton. It blocks the entire area back there of Defile. There's there are 3 big industrial businesses along Defile there, and it frequently gets blocked, which is not a good situation for emergency services or major disasters or anything. Okay, so this is again the older building here, not the oldest, but the main building that was constructed in 2006. You can see that's the face of the current shelter. Like I said, one of the buildings in the back that's used for cat quarantine used to be over here in front of the old city hall. There's a problem with our current shelter, and I'll say this is not advocating for a new one, but it's something we have to deal with all the time. And by state law, under the Health and Safety Code, we're required to have isolation and quarantine areas in an animal shelter, and we do not have sufficient space in that building to do that as required by law. We've been kind of getting a passage on that for a while, but and I can talk about that here in a minute, about the new design. One of the factors in the new design is it would vastly increase the flexibility of moving animals around within the kennel area and the cat areas, and help isolate disease or sick animals that is a requirement by state law. So this is just a couple of pictures of the inside of the animal shelter, the current animal shelter in that building I just showed you. This is an office space and whatever you want to call it, multi-use room there on the right-hand side. But frankly, our animal shelter staff is utilizing every inch of this building to do something in. So if somebody wants to meet a dog or a cat, oftentimes they're brought into this office space because there's not what we call a get-to-know room in this older building. So it's pretty cramped. There's storage outside. You'll see that it's part of our storage for dry food storage is a shipping crate. There's multiple little outbuildings that most of which have been bought like at Home Depot or Lowe's or something. A lot of our equipment like those cat cages are stored outside. I'm just gonna, well, this building is that houses the majority of the shelter. So I know there's been questions about why can't we remodel this building or add on to it. And we've had architects look at it, multiple architects, other construction people. We had the people that built this building go out and take a look at it. So this is a unique building, and you can't necessarily tell it by looking at it from the outside. But the way it is built it is a steel frame that has C-channel and angle channels, steel girders in it, that has prefabricated walls dropped down into that frame from the top, and then the roof is bolted and welded on top of those walls. So it was originally designed, and if you listened to, or you can go back and play it back, and when Quorum, a lady named Kim Dowdy Hickman that did the Quorum needs assessment presentation for the council, she talked about this in her presentation. This building was designed by a company and built to be a temporary military facility in Desert Storm. They built these buildings over there for the Army, basically, and then just left them when the war was over. They were adapted to a number of different uses afterwards, and an architectural firm actually bought the company and put it out of business just to keep people from building these buildings to, that didn't last very long, frankly. So you can see that there's damage. And you might ask, well, why don't we repair that? Well, you can't really adequately repair it. About all you can do is pack foam into it or something, and so it is what it is, and it's lasted this long. If we hope to get a little more use out of it, but you can see deterioration, algae growth, it leaks, there's metal deterioration. There's a lot of problems with it, but we would have to completely raise that building and everything else on that site to reutilize that site to rebuild. And frankly, it's too small that the land area that it sits on is too small to adequately meet the needs of the city into the future. So we would rather use that property for some additional public works space. We've had questions a lot about why not use prefab and metal kit building. So again, both architects in both needs assessments recommended several things and made some observations about prefab metal, or say just prefabricated type buildings and metal kit buildings. Their recommendation was that those are not suitable for dog kennels. And I will show you some pictures here that illustrate why that is. So therefore they recommended, both of those architectural firms in the needs assessment recommended that anything to do with the dog kennels or the area of the dog kennels or the area of the recreation yards for dogs be built out of a more traditional type, solid, permanent construction that is at least like sealed CMU or concrete, and not utilize prefab or metal siding. And that's because of the wear and tear. So again, by law under the Health and Safety Code, Animal shelters have to be cleaned regularly, and we do that at least twice a day with the current shelter. And our staff does a really good job doing that with a shelter that's not really built and designed to be easily cleaned. You can imagine if you have pets at home, what one dog produces. Well, think about there being 25 or 30 dogs every day that you have to clean up for, and cats. So that's a lot of pee and poop, just bluntly. So we try to keep a healthy environment for those animals. And so there's a lot of cleaning, disinfecting that goes on, and there's some very corrosive chemicals that have to be used to disinfect those kennels or anywhere that the dogs travel or the rec yards. If you know anything about pet diseases, there's several ways that diseases are transmitted from one animal to another. One is by touch, generally through the nose. Another is through aspiration through airborne particles. Another one is from viruses and such getting into the ground and can live in the ground for years. It can also live in cracks and crevices in concrete or brick and, on steel, in the grass, in artificial turf. So all of those things that you think about your dog or a dog in the animal shelter living in has to be disinfected multiple times daily. And that creates a lot of wear and tear and corrosion on the surfaces and the materials. So prefab buildings also are, the current building that I showed you pictures of is a prefab building. Now the ones today are better constructed than that, but still you're talking about dogs that could range from 5 pounds to 105 pounds or more, moving in and out of that all the time. So the architects do not recommend anything to do with the dog housing and dog kennels being prefab or metal construction. I'll give you an example of how that can turn out. So this is a facility for the city of Hurst. It's an animal shelter. It's a nice facility. It's about 4 to 5 years old. They have used regular painted carbon steel for their kennels that are in their rec yard, attached to their rec yard. And you can see they're chipped and rusted over here on the side. This is maybe 28 gauge or heavier steel siding that is already experiencing in 4 to 5 years some significant corrosion at the bottom of it. They're going to try to repaint that as many times as they can, but at some point in time, before the life of that building is expired, that's going to have to be replaced, and it's going to be an expensive replacement. That is the artificial turf rec yard, and again, it's hit with a corrosive cleaner twice a day, at least twice a day. So there's been a lot of comparisons made between what we're doing as a facility and some other animal shelter facilities and other bond projects. So I checked with Chris McAllister, who's a friend of ours that works for the city of Fort Worth. He's the assistant code compliance director, and he's in charge of their part of their bond proposition that's going to the voters at the same on the May 2nd, the same as ours. So you may have heard or may be familiar with the Silcox Animal Care Center, which is one of the 2 biggest facilities that the city of Fort Worth runs. They're essentially, the majority of their approximately $60 million bond project is going to replace that building completely. And that's estimated to a 2027, 28 construction. And then you may be more familiar, I know I am, with what they call the North Animal Campus, which is right up here off 156. It's a series of multiple buildings. I've had some pictures of it if you want to see it. But it was built in 2021 at a cost of about $15.5 million. It's made out of prefab, completely out of prefab construction and pre-made metal kits for their dog kennels. Both of the Animal Arts architect and the Quorum architect were consulted on this design of this building, of this facility, and recommended for the city of Fort Worth not to do that. The prefab and metal stuff is fine for cat housing, for office space, for some other, storage, other things that you would have in the facility, just not recommended for dogs to live in. And so, but they built it that way to cut costs. I mean, like most places do. So if you've ever been out there, there's a number of facilities out there and other buildings. These are the dog kennels. They're all prefabricated metal, primarily metal. There's a lot of concrete still, though, inside of them. This is the cat area here, which is in a prefab building. Works great for cats. This is the inside of some of the dog kennel buildings. And when they rebuild one of these, if they add on to one of them, it's going to cost about $4 million a piece. But the entire facility was built, again, about almost 6 years ago now for $15.5 million. When you look at this particular, they used sealed concrete for their dog kennel floors. That sealed concrete is already showing a tremendous amount of wear, especially in the facilities where they have big dogs. Their claws are tearing it up. They're having to resurface it, and they're probably going to come back, if they have enough money in this bond proposition, and come back and cover it with a better flooring material, which the facility that we would design here, should the bond proposition pass, would be built that way in the dog area to start with, and would probably last 30 or 40 years without any kind of reconstruction to it. And that would be, if you're familiar with construction materials, it would be something like an epoxy, tough epoxy floor that doesn't cut, doesn't allow chemicals to soak through it, and is virtually indestructible for animals. This is just a picture that depicts their Sally Port. It's open air. There's some issues with that. Rodents get in there, birds get in there. But again, it's a nice facility. I don't mean to criticize it. It serves their needs. The facility that we would have designed would hopefully have an enclosed Sally Port that doesn't necessarily have to be air conditioned, but what that does is, again, it allows a secure, clean area to pull into and offload animals or unload animals. And there's a lot of transportation, if you're not aware of that, there's a lot of transportation to and from the animal shelter, because we take dogs to TCAP or dogs and cats to TCAP for spay, neuter, and vaccination very frequently. It's almost a daily thing. So just show you that picture to show you what a Sally Port, enclosed Sally Port, would kind of look like. So I'll turn it back over to Gabe for the final part.
So all of our propositions have tax rate impacts. If you go to our bond website, we have an area where you can find your appraised value of your home from TAD and put that in, and it'll tell you what the cost would be for each proposition. So for this proposition, it's approximately a quarter, 25% of the total package. On an average assessed value home, which we are using last year's average assessed value is $253,000 or thereabouts. The yearly impact would be $79.85. If you're a senior, we have a $100,000 senior exemption. It's one of the highest in the county, so that number comes down to $48.32 annually. This came up at some of our last meetings. I think we're going to have a follow-up video to answer some questions. So if voters approve this proposition or other propositions, that doesn't necessarily mean we would issue all the debt all at once. So you see on your flyer, it could raise your taxes by, I think the average homeowner of all propositions, $300 some. That's not going to happen May 3rd, let's say, if voters approve. It would be, we would issue the bonds as the project dictates it for design and construction. So it'd be in pieces as necessary. Next slide. That concludes our presentation. Like I mentioned when we started, if you have questions, please come. Speak into the microphone. We're recording, and we will post this online on our YouTube channel and then on our bond website. So we're happy to answer your questions.
Dan Ditforth, 240 North Hampshire Street. Very good job, Lee. Excellent. You answered a lot of my questions that I've been looking for. Honestly, I still have to say, there's no record of this that can be found to look at it other than watching a city council meeting, okay? So you're talking, we're gonna get stainless cages, tile floors, CMU concrete walls, much better than what Fort Worth has. There's going to be a performance requirement on these architects that this is a 50-year building. We're not going to be coming back on a roof in 10, 15 years because it looks like it has an R-panel roof, and that is a 50-year roof. You go 25 years, then you spray something on it, you keep on moving. Not like some of the other buildings that we're going to spend a lot of money on these rubber membrane flat gravel build-up roofs. From where it looks now, based on the longevity, the additional stuff that's going to be added, stainless cages, we're not going to run into a problem like Hearst has. That is going to be worth about $15 million. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I'll mention again the presentation. We'll make sure that that's on our bond website so everybody can sort through that. We do have the 2 assessments that were done that are on there. They're pretty lengthy, so you have to kind of hunt and peck, but.
Larry Shine, 212 Blue Ridge Trail. Great job. Anyway, I was wondering, the old place, what are you going to do with the old place when you move into this new place? Are you selling it to make up? What are we doing with that property?
Yeah, so should voters approve the existing structure, we would retain it for future use of the Public Works Department. So, yeah, it would. We would demolish the structure, but the space would be used by the Public Works Department.
And what price are we looking to give besides switching the acreage? What price are we looking? Is that part of the $15 million bond?
So the land acquisition is not. In fact, the city council at our meeting this week approved a bid. So the property owner submitted a bid for the exchange. The difference in cash that the city would pay is approximately $660,000. As Lee mentioned, and I think this is somewhat important to note, the property owner has also agreed to dedicate right-of-way for a future connecting roadway, because where this potential facility would be, and where, like Ventura Foods, if you're familiar with the industrial area, there's a dead zone now that exists for public safety access. So there are times when there are trains on the tracks and on the spur tracks, and we cannot access. So by acquiring this property and the future right-of-way, we'll have a connector through that will improve access and safety.
By the way, you guys are doing a great job for working in a dump, because that's exactly what that place is. And it all, And the bad part about it, it's the owners that are doing this. You know, they're just letting their cats and their dogs out, they don't care. And I think we're gonna have a harder time coming now. Because the things that are happening, you're probably gonna have more dogs and more cats coming between the gas, groceries. They won't be able to feed their own animals. So thank you for what you do.
Howdy. I'm gonna have to make this taller again like last time. All right, hi, Benjamin Guttery, Saginaw. I'm one of the skeptics of this center. I'll just be totally honest with you. I still have questions on it. You know, some of the things that were mentioned in there, like Fort Worth, you know, they have a bond for 60 million. You know, they're a city of 1.1 million people. And 5 years ago, they built one for the north half of the city for the same amount we're doing now, about roughly. Inflation's been about 18% since then. I know it's not apples to apples, that's a metal building, but it's a big complex of metal buildings. I also don't understand how from the assessment in 2022-ish to now, we started participating in the TNVR program, which is supposed to cut down on feral cat colonies. And according to the presentation I watched from our team, it has cut down on the feral cat colonies a lot. I even spoke out at that meeting and I said, great job. I've actually noticed less cats in Saginaw Springs because of it. I don't understand why the kennels have to go up if we're participating in this program. You know, I know that it's going to take a couple years to ramp up to the full cost of this, but my house is not too far off from the average. And my taxes are going to go up $430 a year. And this bond is for 26 years. So it might take a few years to ramp up, but it's like another mortgage in length of time.
Do you have a question or?
Yeah.
Yeah, ask the question, we can answer.
Yeah. Well, the first question was
Okay.
about the TNVR and why has the cat kennels gone up? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just
You wanna
also want to
address
point
that?
out other people were allowed to kind of make their statements
Yeah.
too. So I'm going to make mine.
I mean, that's a valid question for sure. So the TNVR program, right now, we have a place to hold 9 cats, feral cats.
Yes.
That's the maximum that we can put in there. In a full-blown trapping series, which we, will do many times during the year,
Right.
we can fill that up in one day. In fact, our cat capacity has reached its limit or exceeded it at least 33 times in the last fiscal year, and been kind of bounced off of that about another 30-something times. So the problem with that is, again, when we bring animals into the shelter that are from the outside, they're unknown, they've been running wild perhaps for who knows how long, they frequently will be sick. I mean, they frequently will have some sort of diseases and maybe never have been vaccinated. So we simply cannot, liability-wise or humanely, enter those cats into the population with other cats that are up for adoption. So we have to have separate living quarters. So the reason for that simply is we can have 35 cats in there for adoption one day and pick up 10 strays the next and be bouncing off the capacity again. And the new design would allow a lot more flexibility on how we manage those cats that come in and out. So, other than that, as you can imagine, so there are people that occasionally hoard cats.
Right.
Right? We've run across places that have 20 or more cats in one, 1,200 square foot home. And typically, when we find those, it's because the owner's passed away, there's cats running everywhere, they're sick, they're starving. So we have to draw on other animal shelters to help us out oftentimes with those, and other rescue groups. But generally, for at least a period of a few days, we have to house those animals somewhere just in an emergency basis. So an increased capacity would help with that as well.
Okay. I have, I guess, just two more questions. Because like with Fort Worth, for example, they have some off-site centers that help with adoptions, especially on weekends and nights when most families, frankly, can come by and adopt an animal. Will this proposed animal shelter be operating the current hours of the animal shelter, or are we going to look at being open on weekends and nights to help increase adoptions, because most people work in our families?
It's a great question, and I think, voters approved, we have a new facility. You would want the facility open as much as possible to contribute to adoptions, right? It's a great point. Appreciate you asking.
And my last question is, at one of the meetings, and forgive me, I've been to a lot of meetings on all kinds of things, was one last night, a statement was made, I believe by our finance director, that according to the current tax rate and sales tax receipts and stuff, if all three of these bonds are approved by taxpayers, that we would not be able to borrow more money until the late 2030s. I think that it was either 2037 or 2039. So correct me if I'm wrong, or clear that up. Yeah.
34 to 36 is where we have more capacity.
More capacity to borrow. Okay, so
Yeah.
34 to 36.
So the way we fund capital projects, it's with a portion of our tax rate, and that payment pays for our bonds. So like with, everyone's familiar with a mortgage, you pay a principal and an interest portion. So not until, was it 2034, will we have capacity to be able to free up capacity within the existing tax rate. Because every year we're chipping away, but depending on the way it's scheduled, yeah.
I mean, 2034 to 2036 is 8 to 10 years. And I know, the police station feels like it's bursting at the seams, fire station number 2, the rec center. I just want to make sure we're not maxing out stuff. That's how I run my house. And, I appreciate the staff. I know y'all have done a lot of work on all this. I know that it's not easy for the animal control people, that the current building that they're in. And I just got a lot of questions, just concerned about my neighbors. So thanks.
Appreciate you asking.
That's not me. Okay. No, we're okay. I have a list, I'm sorry. First question is, what's the purpose of an animal shelter? I've read the mission statement on their page, but what's the purpose of an animal shelter?
Okay, that's a great question. So there are basically 3 sections out of the Health and Safety Code of the state of Texas that authorize municipalities to conduct the animal control authority. And there's part of that is specifically designed to keep strays and animals off the streets, to humanely dispose of those animals if they have to be disposed of, if they're sick or injured. There's also a big component in what we call rabies control. So the state gives us authority to appoint a rabies control authority, which is typically the head of the animal control unit. And obviously that, I probably don't have to explain that to you why that's important, but in doing all of those functions, we have to have somewhere to keep animals that are picked up. So the majority of animals that are in the shelter are animals that are picked up as strays or caught in the TNVR program, feral cats. Some of those are chipped, and we can find an owner back for those. There's also a high number, especially in the last few years, of people just deciding that they want to abandon their animals, or sometimes they bring them to the shelter and want to drop them off and say, I just can't take care of this dog anymore, will you keep it? So there are a number of laws that require us to humanely keep those animals that we take into our custody, take care of them, and give them the best possible care that we can. So I'll put all those things together, and it produces an animal shelter. There's regulations, again, that about the construction and layout of those shelters. Animals must be separated by species, so you can't just kind of throw everybody in one room. They have to be separated by sex amongst the species. And then again, they have to be given medical care if they need it and taken care of until you can get them adopted or picked up by a rescue group or whatever the case. And again, give our staff a hand because they're doing a remarkable job moving animals through our shelter as fast as they can. Our average stay for a dog right now is less than 30 days, which is under the average nationally. And for a cat is under 17, 18, under about 18 days, let's say.
And that's because you re-released them.
Well, that's true. That's a big part of it. We also use a lot of rescue groups. There's believe it or not, there's places, especially up in the north part of the United States, where put it bluntly, the average life of a cat is kind of short, but they like to have cats. So we actually send a lot of cats through rescue groups in some of the northern states. They've been doing a remarkable job on trying to get cats and dogs through there. And all of that with being able to maintain a 90% live release rate through adoptions and to rescue groups as well.
So in relation to that, so we have the free vaccinations or the low-cost vaccinations and the free chipping. I assume that's paid for by the city, which means me?
No, most of that is paid for through donations
Okay.
from benevolent groups that support that give us money to do it. Obviously, a little bit of money in our budget is going to go to that sort of thing, but the great majority of it is provided by donations.
Okay. All right, another question is, in your drawings, and I know it's all conceptual and everything, those are really fancy buildings. I mean, I understand the need for the functionality, but you've got this, sky-high roof. That's gonna create a great problem for heating and cooling and all this open plaza in the front. And, you've got the list of materials said paving stones, and you're gonna want, these are not cheap things. And it needs to be a functional building. It does not have to be a fancy building. And I think, in my opinion, I just wonder, why, is that the ones you looked at were all fancy buildings too. So I don't know if we're trying to keep up with the Joneses, but is that the idea you have in mind for this? Is something that's, a showpiece?
Well, no, keep in mind those are architectural concepts, and architects want it to look pretty, but it is going to be built for functionality. The upside to having it be an attractive place is you want it to be an attractive place for people to come look for animals and want to adopt those pets out. We want to move those animals through the system as fast as possible. So it is quite beneficial to that part of keeping animals and trying to get them out and adopted with people, to have an attractive place that people want to come to, that where there's a little bit of room for them to get to know the animals and decide whether they're a good fit for their family or not. So modern shelters that are built, either on a budget or not, generally try to have a facade on their, at least in their beginning, or their front face to the public, that is inviting and, has an open feel to it, so.
Okay, I know you talk about the, how the catching the cats and releasing them works. It's like, is this gonna fix the problem? Is this building gonna help this issue?
Well, the building, again, will give our staff a lot more flexibility and capacity than we have now, or capacity through flexibility, I should say, really, because it's not a huge change from where we have now, but we will be able to comply with the law and move animals through when they come in, make sure they're not diseased, make sure they get the proper treatment before they go up for adoption in a different area of the building. The TNVR program, again, when we reach cat capacity, now we have to stop. We have to stop trapping cats. It's very simple. And because we can't pack unknown cats together in the same cage. So it is an impediment to that program, and probably makes it less effective over time.
I know we have like the empty old library, and I know they're gutting it. I don't know if any of that, space could be used for something. I didn't know when we were about the way the building and the land was working. I didn't know if we could, use part of the land, move the offices for the Public Works or the other group that's over there to that building and use some of that land there.
So, great comment, and we've actually awarded a construction contract to renovate the old library right next to City Hall. It should kick off very soon and be about a 12-month project. So the primarily interior renovation, but building inspections, code enforcement, trying to think, Public Works admin will move to that building. So all of our kind of permitting and customer service facing functions will be in that building as well as next door in City Hall. So that building is in the process of being renovated. You may have seen, you could walk out this evening, there's a roll-off dumpster. They're taking out scrap metal, and that'll be renovated here.
Okay, I just didn't know if that would prevent us from having to purchase more land, if we could use land that's right there beside the current animal shelter. That's what I was asking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the land where the current animal shelter, if voters approved, would just be future space for our Public Works Department.
How much is this gonna increase staffing and staffing costs?
Yeah, so like the building that we're in now, that voters approved, if voters approve one, we've got to build the facility. Lee could probably tell you better, but there certainly are some efficiencies with a modern facility. The vast majority of their work is related to sanitation. Is that a fair estimate? Yep. So the long story short is we wouldn't commit to any staffing increases until we know what we're dealing with. We did the same exact thing with the library and senior center. So I can't answer that question, but should voters approve, we anticipate some efficiencies by virtue of having a more functional building, easier to clean building, that sort of thing.
But even with more capacity, you're gonna have to have more care given, so there will be some kind of increase in staffing, I assume.
I think it, yeah.
So yeah, and that's a great question about. It's hard to predict, okay, right now. But again, like Gabe said, and I'm stepping out from in front of this speaker here because it's echoing. So we've already committed to opening, if the bond is passed and we build a new shelter, we've already committed to opening with our current staff numbers, whatever that happens to be 2 years from now, or essentially, or maybe 2.5. What we will realize, or what we would potentially realize in a new design that we don't have any of right now, is automatic draining systems that we can just come in and wash, things out into a draining system that goes straight into the sewer system, instead of having to sweep it and hose it and pick it up with some other method by hand. And then the disinfectant part is much more seamless. Right now, the kennel floors are concrete, they're cracked, they're decayed. Frankly, there's who knows what kind of organisms growing in those things. And so they have to be very careful about scrubbing those down and disinfecting them. We've had tick outbreaks because there's so many little places for insects to hide, things like that. So it takes a long time right now to clean the shelter, even though the capacity is lower than what the new one would be. The newer one would have a number of efficiencies in it that would slow that, or would decrease that time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Scott Ballard. So I'm here as a person, not as a business owner. We have to build a new facility. I mean, society is judged by how it treats its vulnerable people. I realize these aren't people, but they're pretty dang close. And the current facilities are not acceptable. Having said that, it seems very expensive in that, yes, it's a nicer building and a nicer material than NAD or NAC for a similar price, but NAC was 4 times the footprint of 40,000 feet. Some questions I have, I do like the land swap. I think that's a good idea to keep costs down. That's reasonable. Now, shouldn't the industrial companies that are now going to have 911 access offset some of the cost of at least paving the access roads so they can get 911 services and be in compliance with that?
So the question is related to future roadway,
Okay?
correct?
Yeah.
Is that, I'm just trying to
Exactly,
confirm.
because
Yeah.
again, part of the reason of doing this land swap is you're going to get access to that pathway that can now be used for emergency vehicles. And that area needs emergency vehicles. Should they not share some of the cost of this project?
So we don't have a method after the fact, once a business is there, to add that cost on. Yeah, I don't, we can't, like to charge an impact fee or something after the fact when something's existing. Part of the kind of mechanics, the way things work, we had a similar issue. The city has a master thoroughfare plan.
Right.
So the master thoroughfare plan shows all existing streets and future streets. This is not on this proposed, it's not on the master thoroughfare plan. So we couldn't reasonably tell an existing property owner, hey, you have a proportionate share in this roadway. Didn't exist 20 years ago or whenever. Does it improve their site? Of course it does. Does it contribute to safety? Yeah. So we had a similar issue with roadway that was not on our master thoroughfare plan that connects Old Decatur and Saginaw Boulevard. So the developer said, hey, what if we put a connecting roadway in? The city said, that'd be great. Improves access and through flow, probably increase the commercial viability. Yeah, long rambling answer, but no, we don't have a way other than we would commit over time to try to connect that through, and that wouldn't be probably an all-in-one deal. That would probably be a phased approach.
Can assessments be made on future property sales in that industrial area to cover some of the costs of this?
It can, and the way that works is when parcels are sold and divided, it's through the platting.
Right. That would be one of my concerns is, again, the industrial park is going to get a benefit from this, and they need 911 services probably more than most. Next question, I know, is Halfley going to be, is their function going to be moved to the new construction on the corner of Old Decatur and Bailey Boswell? The Halfley Development Building, just right over there?
Yeah, of course, that's a school district. I have no knowledge of their future plans. Yeah, I couldn't answer that.
Because it's a large facility that is not going to have any use if they move. That's my understanding, is that they're moving their functions to the new construction on the corner there where the old school used to be.
Oh,
Wayside?
They're not putting any of that up for sale, for public sale.
oh, are you aware of that? Yeah,
The drawings I just saw, the tennis courts and the sports complex and parking, no new buildings over there.
Okay.
I heard that QT is looking at that land.
I don't want to speculate. All I can tell you is my understanding, I have not heard that the Halfley is going to vacate.
Again, this is just what I've heard from fellow business owners, is that Halfley will be relocated. Now, again, I don't know.
So our understanding as it relates to Wayside is, of course, the building has been constructed. What's remaining is the sports fields will be constructed.
Okay, so that's going to be school property still.
That's
Okay,
correct. Yep.
Cool. And that, again, that just kind of goes back, this has to happen. We need a new animal shelter. And not just for prettiness, but for public safety, and we need to be nice to dogs. I mean, but, again, I look at Fort Worth building something 4 times the size for the same cost. That's my primary concern.
Certainly understand, and again, I want to say that Leah explained this in detail. There was a lot of thought, and all these same concerns the council had to work through, because any facility, doesn't matter if it's this facility or when we built our I still call it our new fire station, we had a bond committee, and they recognized it as a number 1 priority. And I remember people saying, "Well, it can't cost that," and we make decisions based on advice that we're given and fair market estimates. So I don't disagree with you. Facilities are expensive. I feel like we have brought solid information to the city council to make a decision, which honestly doesn't matter because voters are ultimately going to make the decision.
Can it be phased to meet our needs? I realize there'd be a slightly higher cost as construction costs increase every year, but again, it's a large facility, and Saginaw city limits aren't getting bigger. I mean, we're getting more residents, but, so that's another question, is can it be phased to save some of that?
Yeah, so if voters approve, we would have authorization for $15 million. And that is all in, as you pointed out, minus land. So the first immediate action would be to start design. And then we work through, like someone had mentioned, what's it going to look like, the actual features. We have a good idea of what we're dealing with. Because of the environment we're in with construction inflation, I would guess, as we've done with past facilities, we would want to get a construction manager on board as soon as possible. It was done successfully for this building and successfully for the fire station. The construction manager's job is to work with the designer, the architect, and control costs. They're at risk because as part of the process, they're working side by side with the architect to finish design. They submit a not to exceed amount. And if they blow that budget, they're eating the cost. They're eating into their, not to exceed, which is a benefit to the city. So I couldn't answer your question whether we could phase it. My guess is because of the escalation dynamic, we would want to design and get to construction very quickly.
I mean, just as far as like starting with a third the size, and then that's what I mean by phasing.
Yeah, and that's what I get where you're going with that, and I think that's a valid point. So again, we've made some comparisons to the NAC up here, which was designed and is being built for that, with that very thing in mind. So when they, as Fort Worth grows, which will grow by tens of thousands, a year continually for who knows how long, all they have to do is come in and build one of those kennels, one of those dog kennels, to hold like 50 more dogs to accommodate any increase. That and that's a significantly reduced cost than from the overall construction. What we're hoping to do here is to build it now to meet the needs of the city for a long term, like 30 to 40 years, without having to add anything to it or rebuild it or reconstruction or do major repairs. So is the cost ever going to be lower than it is right now? Probably not. So that's an economic question and factors into why we would prefer to build it because Saginaw will reach a build out long before Fort Worth does. And you know, hopefully the animal capacity will hold the additional people that come in. But we've consulted with 2 experts to tell us that should happen. So we shouldn't have to build anything additional back.
Last 2 questions. Will you be accepting animals from the county? So it's just limited to Saginaw residents, correct?
So that's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to mention that earlier. So there's a misconception, frankly, that we take in animals from anywhere, anytime, and we don't do that. Only on a temporary emergency basis, basically. However, as you can guess, Fort Worth animals have no clue where the Saginaw limits are. So they come over here all the time. Blue Mound, we get animals from Blue Mound, Blue Cows and Cats.
So can the city or can the county help with funds?
Well,
or any of the other municipalities?
So I kind of did a little survey and contacted a number of other cities, smaller cities around that are also in need of animal shelters, and talked to the county as well. They all have situations now where they are under contract or operate their own shelters. We could probably do that, probably contract with any of those other cities. In fact, the short answer to what I found on my little unofficial survey was that most of the cities that we contacted said, yeah, we're in need of a new animal shelter, but we don't really have the bond capacity to contribute to that. But if you build one big enough to accommodate us, we're interested in contracting with you. Well, what we've done is we have pared down the size of a shelter that we would need to fit those needs to contract with other cities to strictly accommodate the animals in our city. So it's unlikely that we would have the capacity on a regular basis to contract with a larger entity, even like for the county.
One thing in working through this, there's kind of some demographic shifts. So in the relatively recent past, say past 10 years, so Americans and Saginaw residents are indicative of this. As a percentage, are owning more pets. There's a greater percentage of pet owners. Now you add that into when the facilities were built, of course the city was far smaller. So we're kind of fighting a couple issues. The reality is our issue here with pet capacity is something that every city's dealing with. But somebody had asked me like, well, you know, why do we, I'm not a good example. I was raised on a farm in a rural area. This is not a problem I'm familiar with, but this is very difficult for me to say. My dad, dairy farmer, refers to me as a city boy. I'm now a city boy, and he tells me how my hands are soft, which they are. Thank you for your sympathy. But this is the dynamic we're in. We experienced during COVID, and this is nationwide. Google this and check this out. You had a lot of people getting pets, and then after some amount of time, people and it's just.
Okay, so in other words, there won't be enough excess capacity at the first to get some funds from other jurisdictions.
You know, I hesitate to say no to that, but it's not likely. There might be for a short-term basis. One more component kind of that feeds into the answer to your question, and I think it's probably pretty evident, but maybe nobody's thought about it. In the time that we built the current shelter to today, there has been a considerable difference in philosophy change about how animals should be taken in and cared for humanely. So it's not like it used to be. I'll say, just to put it bluntly.
No, I'm with you. And again, I agree with this in principle. It's a lot of money. And I appreciate you guys' time on this. It sounds like you've done your homework for it. But that's just my concern as a taxpayer, and I'm sure it's a concern of a lot of people. But we got to do something. So thanks for your time.
We'll come around this way, it's okay.
Sure.
Good evening. I'm James Patterson, Rancho North. I have a few things to say that lead into some questions. There's no doubt that we need a new animal shelter. That's a given. I'm not here about that. I'm here about the money. You've got the Motel 6 all the way to the Ritz-Carlton and the Drover Hotel. The Drover Hotel is too much for this town. We compare to Fort Worth. Really, we need to compare to White Settlement. They have recently taken over River Oaks Animal Control, which totals out exactly the same population as us. They have a nice animal shelter over there. It's not over the top, and it works just fine. Nobody's breaking the law with our animal shelter that I'm aware of, and neither are they. Watauga, same difference, 25,000 people. Look at their shelter. It's all relative. I briefly looked up there on the board a minute ago, and I said, wow, $25,000 or $20,000 for a gate. That's ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. So again, yeah, I said I'm leading into it. Please don't interrupt. Well, sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to ask my questions.
sure,
And
Mr.
I
Patterson,
asked-
and I'll tell you,
Well, wait a
this
minute,
is
wait a
nothing you
minute.
don't
The
already
que- the
know.
question- the
This is
question
an
is-
emotional issue, right? But if what we're trying to do here
Let me
is
please
share
ask my
information
question to you
and
that I've
facts.
asked you before.
Sure, go ahead and ask your question, sir. I'm waiting.
Okay. As another gentleman said, 1 million. I'm going to go 2.5 million. Clark County, Nevada. 40,000 square foot. It's going on right now. It's been approved. 40,000 square feet animal shelter. 2.5 million people. 650 kennels. That's 39 million. We'll round it off at 40. Cut that in half. That's 325 kennels at 20 million. It's not adding up. There's a D.R. Horton in every town. Materials can be shipped this, that, and the other way. Why?
Yeah, why? So, again, this is an emotional issue. We're talking about pets.
We're talking about money.
That's right. We have engaged 2 architects to advise the city council.
I don't mean to interrupt, but when I was at that city council meeting,
Right.
Ms. Kim, I believe that's her name, y'all said earlier with quorum,
Right.
that missed a meeting, and her boss didn't show up. We all showed up. Then when she comes, the council, she didn't answer their questions. It was not transparent. I said, wow, that's too cushy for me. You guys have already paid them $80,000 for what?
No,
You
we
can buy.
we haven't paid him $80,000.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
well, needless to say,
So here's the.
answer
I
the question about
understand.
Clark County, please.
I couldn't tell you a thing about Clark County because I don't have the information.
I gave you the information via text, sir.
Oh, okay.
We spoke.
Okay, what I can tell you is what has been presented here and what is publicly available. You can make up your own mind as to whether you would like to support it or not support it. It is really that simple. I'm not here to argue with you or
I'm just
anybody.
asking, why is it over the top?
Right. I'm providing information, Lee's providing information, and everyone can make their own decision. I don't know what more I can tell you, sir. And I appreciate you calling me. We have good conversations when
Sure
you
we
call.
do.
I might add for the crowd, and I really hope, otherwise James is going to light me up after this. Every once in a while, there's semis park in front of Taco Casa, and I get a call or text from Mr. Patterson, say, hey, they can't be parking there.
Yeah, they've torn down telephone poles, and there's no parking signs.
Right. So-
And why don't you want to uphold the law?
I say that because I appreciate you.
Oh, okay.
Right. But I don't know that you have a question, and all I can tell you is we have the information. It's publicly available.
You put down Hearst.
You can make your own decision.
Very well.
Thank you, sir.
I vote no.
There any other? Sure.
I'd like to say something before you come back, because, you know, I just want to tag on to Mr. Patterson. And we live in probably like an average home in the city, and I know you've got like a limit of animals to 5 per household or something like that. And there's all different kinds, sizes of households and stuff. So you're talking about 91 pets being housed, and somehow one of your numbers was 13 million. And that basically averages out to $142,857 and some change for each pet to, you know, for this. And that seems really ridiculous. If I were to multiply that by the 5 pets that I'm allowed to have, that would make my home, that I would put my pets in a home that is $714,285. So yes, it's way over the top. I'm not saying we don't need something, because obviously things are run down. They either need repair or whatever. I think the land swap sounds fine. The road coming through for emergency services, I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the amount of money that we're putting into this, and it just seems over the top for me. I vote no.
Again, and the purpose tonight is not to take a straw poll or something. Our goal as city staff is to provide information to you as a voter and resident. I'm a voter and resident as well, and we can all make whatever decision we choose. So if there's any other questions related to fact or design, or I think Mr. Ditforth had a... Okay.
Hey y'all, Brian Gill, Park Center Boulevard. So I love pets, I love animals, you know, don't get me wrong, but are we able to demolish the current building and rebuild on that land, that plot of land we're on now, to help minimize everybody's concerns?
It certainly would be possible, but the footprint that it would leave, keep in mind that little rectangle that I showed you, the blue, that was outlined in blue, is 0.68 acres. So essentially the footprint of the potential building that we would build would take up like 80% of that. Wouldn't have any parking. It would be very cramped. And frankly, from an economic standpoint, that is probably not a really good investment in that location.
Right, and I understand that, but maybe downsize some to help?
It's possible. It's possible. It was not at all recommended by, you know, anybody that we have consulted with.
Thank you, Lee. Or Gabe, you want?
No.
Okay.
Right, I'll follow up on that. Sorry. I'm going to jump and cut the line. So I'm Julie Jacobson, Saginaw, 30 years. So let me ask you, just following up on that, you said, well, you know, it's possible. It wouldn't be recommended, but possible. But if we were to demolish the current building and rebuild on that site, where would the animals that currently are being housed and cared for be for the next 2.5 years while a new building was purchased? Is it really possible? That's kind of my question.
Well, that's a real good question. We would have to find somewhere else to house all the current animals and any future animals that were impounded. And that would just add to the whole total cost of the whole thing. It likely would be realistically at least a year and a half for demo and rebuild after the design phase. So, yeah, that.
Thank you. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing some component or element that my brain wasn't thinking about.
Better get up here before somebody,
I'll ask you a question. I just made a statement. You had some very good questions. Thank you very much. I'm just going to clarify some things I've heard and seen and want to make sure it's in the contract to the citizens, as the bank man said during the city council meeting. Council members mentioned to get to the $15 million, we had to lose all storage and we lost some kennels. Is that correct?
Okay. That's a great question, and I neglected to mention this as well. So you saw the potential residual there between the cost projection and the 15 million. Hopefully, we will manage this well if it passes and build a shelter within that 15 million. So what we've talked about is, yes, to get to that square footage from the original recommendation, we had to cut a lot of storage. We don't want to bring shipping crates back in, but we could build a fairly inexpensive metal building, prefab metal building on that lot, which would, which the 5 acre footprint of that property would allow for that well within that space area, and we could use that for storage. We looked at, say you could build another 40,000 square feet of inexpensive metal building to store stuff in that would be constructed where it's sealed up good, hopefully rodent free for the most part, bird free, and we could put stuff in. It wouldn't necessarily even have to be air conditioned. So yeah, that's an option. And to feed back into the last lady's question, on the rebuilding it on site, now we wouldn't have the room to do that at all. So whatever we could squeeze into that 0.68 acres would be it. So,
And it'd be nice if the dog kennel trucks could actually sit in the shade, so when my dog gets picked up, the truck's not at 180 degrees inside. So I'd like to see some shaded cover. And to that point, in your podcast, you mentioned that the current architect has not been selected. And this will go out for, I believe, what I would call as an RFP, request for proposal. We could put a performance requirement on that with a square footage requirement, kennel requirement, and a maximum do not exceed number. We can gain what we need. We can have that PEMB added, additional shading. And I know we probably can't, but these guys also need a trailer to take these dogs to different events. It's probably not part of this package, but that also needs to be thought about. So, and that is going to be done. We could possibly get 3 different potential bids from value-added qualified contractors.
Sure. So, and I'm glad you brought that up. This is a misconception that has circled on Facebook, which is the bane of all our existence. But what we would do if voters approve, we would follow the exact same delivery method and procurement that we have for this building and the fire station. We would do a RFQ, request for qualifications, to submit our architect of record, the designer. Shortly after that firm is selected, and this is a selection based on qualifications. We would bring that to the council and we negotiate the design scope. Shortly after that, we would do another request for proposals to get the construction manager at risk, which we've done for the fire station in this building. And I had mentioned earlier to one of the other questions, the benefit of having a construction manager at risk early on in the process is to make sure you don't bust your budget. We have a not to exceed of 15 million if voters approve, and to value engineer things. Lee, wouldn't be the scope of this meeting, maybe offline, could tell you all the hiccups we had with this building to stay within our budget and, change the, gosh, I can't even remember our glass and steel. And so all these design meetings are happening to make sure that we can deliver a product we've told people. So based on our estimates, the last thing we would want to do in a value engineering scenario is cut square footage. We'd do it if we have to, because we've got a not to exceed budget. But I think the process we've proven to be effective. Chief Spears was a project manager on the city side for the fire station. It's worked, and we'd work through that process. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up.
And if the architect's gonna take 9 months to design and 1.5 million of it to do the design, they can find us 1,250 square feet and additional storage and all the kennels we need. They can't explain that away.
And don't want to get too technical, but in almost every project, we've had ad alternates, so we would bid things that we, if budget allowed, we could add on, if the money's there. So we'd follow the same process.
Round two. Got one more question. So I know that I heard Mr. Lee say during the presentation, somebody had asked if we could kind of rent out space to other cities. But since we reduced it from what the committee had recommended to what the council agreed upon to bring before voters, we reduced it a little bit. We wouldn't really not be able to, but it'd be unlikely to. That's what I heard correct. So, but we currently do Blue Mound's animal control, right? Because I see on the weekly reports, sometimes there's 0 in Blue Mound, sometimes there's 1 cat or something, So are they going to be still utilizing us planned for this new facility?
There's no plan right now to cut them out of that. So yeah, and that's a good point. We would likely still be contracting to house, to provide the services and house animals out of Blue Mound. Blue Mound doesn't have a real big tax base. They don't pay us much, but we do regain a lot of our service value back because we keep fees that are collected on adoption fees and things like that when people come and pick their animals up. But they account for a very small percentage of our activity.
I'm one of the people that heard the contract amount on Facebook, and Mr. Jose told me more of the details of it, and I appreciated him explaining more of it, that they do pay for like some of the like vaccinations and stuff like that. I thought it was just I forget what the amount was, but I talked to a council member about this, and if it just as an idea, if Blue Mound can't afford to pay us additional monies, or they can't participate in this bond in some way, I would ask that the city staff look into doing maybe some sort of like employee trade of sorts, where maybe we get some of their code enforcement people on Fridays when our code enforcement people are off, or maybe we get an extra building inspector guy for a week a month or something, just to kind of offset the subsidizing our neighbors. I know that we benefit from taking care of their stuff, because otherwise their animals would wander into our city and interrupt business. I do understand that, but we are subsidizing another city, and I understand why we are, but I don't know if or maybe some of their police officers can help with speeding on Basswood or something. I don't know if it's possible for y'all to even look into that, but I just wanted to ask that, to look into it. I don't even know if it's legal to use their police, but thank you. And I know tonight's been emotional. We're all neighbors, and I just want everybody to realize that everybody took the time to come here tonight and ask questions. And we're the ones that cared enough to come ask. There's plenty of conversations that are happening that are not here, and that are happening in front yards and on Facebook. And none of us are bad people. All of us are mean and well. We're all neighbors, and thank y'all.
I got a question. I feel weird looking at everybody. I'm Todd Flippo, I'm the mayor. I just want to say a couple things. Larry left, but my buddy Larry brought up a real good point. Us collecting animals, it's a Band-Aid. The city it's not our fault that people are poor pet owners. We have to clean up the mess. And that's unfortunate. Our animal control folks are amazing. They work so hard under rough conditions. It's really impressive what they can do. But again, and I've said this before, we could build whatever animal shelter you want, and it's going to be full because of poor pet owners. So I don't know a good way to reach people and encourage them to vaccinate their pets, to spay and neuter. That's the problem. So I don't know how to fix that. I do know that I want people to vote. Just vote. I told people, I don't care how you vote, please vote. We have 15,000 potential voters, registered voters, voter age. Out of those 15,000, if we get 700 to vote, we're lucky. That's terrible. That's embarrassing. Can we get 10% of that? 1,500 people to vote? So please tell your neighbors to vote. I'm just asking you, please vote, take the time. And I want to thank y'all for coming. Benjamin mentioned this. This is democracy in action. This is y'all are here. Most people didn't bother to come, but thank y'all for coming out. Thank y'all for caring about our city. So thank you so much. And again, please vote, because it's embarrassing how few people vote. People don't. I told them, we were at the Aberley last week, the senior living center. They didn't believe me when I told them how few people vote. So it's unfortunate. People will vote for the big elections, but not for us. So please come out and vote. Thank y'all.
It's a good. Good segue maybe to wrap things up. I want to remind you, you probably have got this postcard at your house. You will get an informational mailer if you haven't already. Election Day is May 2nd. This will be an Election Day location, the Library Senior Center. Early voting begins April 20th to April 28th. And again, the library will be location here in Saginaw.
And candidate forums tomorrow?
Yeah. Our city council election candidate forum is tomorrow, and that'll be held in this building. That is, will be recorded. It's conducted not by the city, but the League of Women Voters, so independent. But yeah, encourage everyone to come out.
Same time?
It is at 6:30. All right. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.